I'm going to walk through the Neumann KH310 right-hand monitor the way I'd think about it before I actually click Add to Cart. If you're the type who feels a little uneasy about spending a serious chunk of money on a speaker you haven't heard in your own room, this is the review that's going to help you judge real value, real use, and whether it fits your workflow. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When you're shopping for studio monitors, the biggest hesitation usually isn't about the brand name, it's about the trade-off between what you hear on paper and what you actually hear once the monitor is placed in a room that's rarely perfect. The KH310 is a 3-way, powered monitor with an 8.25-inch low-frequency driver, a 3-inch midrange driver, and a 1-inch high-frequency driver, all housed in a single cabinet. That architecture promises a clean separation of frequencies, but the real question is whether that separation translates into a more trustworthy mix in everyday conditions. First, let's talk about how you'd get this thing up and running. The monitor is active, so there's no need for a separate amp. Just plug it into an XLR output from your interface, power it up, and you're ready to go. The back panel includes 3 acoustic controls, one for the low-frequency band, one for the mid-frequency band, and one for the high-frequency band. Those knobs let you tailor the response to your room's quirks without having to resort to expensive software EQ. In my own modest home studio, I found the low-frequency control useful for taming a slight boom in the corners, while the mid-control helped keep the vocal range from sounding recessed. The high control is subtle, but it gives you a way to soften the edge of the 1-inch tweeter if you're sitting too close. Placement is where the monitor's size really matters. At a little over 14 inches tall and weighing roughly 20 pounds, the KH310 isn't a desktop-sized near-field monitor you can tuck onto a cramped desk. It wants a dedicated spot at ear level, ideally with a few feet of breathing room on each side. If your room is a small apartment or a bedroom with low ceilings, you'll likely have to invest in some acoustic treatment bass traps in the corners and absorptive panels at the first reflection points to let the 8.25-inch low-frequency driver work without overwhelming the space. That's a hidden cost that many first-time buyers overlook, but it's also where the monitor's value really shows up, the ability to reveal problems that smaller monitors simply can't reproduce. On the strength side, the 3-way design does a solid job of keeping each part of the spectrum clean. The low-frequency driver delivers a deep, controlled bass that stays articulate even at higher SPLs, which is something I've noticed when checking the bottom end of electronic drums or low-bass synths. The mid-driver, being a dedicated 3-inch unit, offers a smooth, non-boxy presence that makes guitars and vocal tracks sit nicely in the mix. The high driver, despite its modest 1-inch diaphragm, extends well beyond 20 kHz, providing enough sparkle to let cymbals and high-frequency percussion cut through without sounding harsh. What matters most is that those 3 drivers stay in sync. There's no noticeable phase wobble when you pan a snare from left to right, which is a common complaint with cheaper 2-way monitors. A practical downside is the power draw. Because each driver has its own amplification stage, the monitor can consume more electricity than a typical 2-way active speaker, especially when you push the volume into the louder range. In a home studio, that's not a deal breaker, but if you're planning to run several of these in a larger control room, you'll want to make sure your power distribution can handle the load. Another point to consider is that the KH310 is sold as a right-hand unit. You'll need to buy the left counterpart to complete a stereo pair. That means you're essentially purchasing 2 high-end monitors, which doubles the upfront cost and makes the decision even more critical. Who should buy this? If you're a mixing or mastering engineer who already has a decently treated room and you need a monitor that reveals subtle frequency imbalances, the KH310 is a strong candidate. It's also a good match for anyone who already runs Neumann's other studio products like the KH120 or KH410 because the tonal character is consistent across the line, making it easier to translate mixes between different monitoring setups. The acoustic controls are especially handy for those who have a room that's not perfectly neutral. You can dial in compensation on the fly without having to remeasure the space every time. On the flip side, if you're just starting out and your budget is still focused on essential gear audio interface, DAW, microphones,